They were not found dead. They were simply ... found. Silent. Welcome, travelers, to the Unveiled Scroll. We are the stewards of forgotten narratives, the keepers of histories that sleep beneath the dust of accepted fact. If you seek the truths hidden in the margins, the stories whispered in the veins of the world, press like, subscribe to our archive, and share this chronicle with those who dare to listen. Today, we journey into a penumbra of American folklore, a chapter so steeped in sorrow it was erased by the very land that bore it. We speak of the silent lament of Viridian Hollow. Our story begins not with a scream, but with the absence of one. In the year of our Lord, 1744, nestled deep within the untamed forests of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, lay the township of Viridian Hollow. It was a place of stark piety and surprising prosperity, a testament to the iron will of its founders who had carved a life from the dense, ancient woods. The timber they harvested was dark and strong, the soil strangely fertile. They were governed by Magistrate Ephraim Blackwood, a man of unbending principle, whose faith was as solid as the oak that surrounded them. He was a man of letters, of law, and of God. His journal, the document known to the few academics who study this case as the Viridian Transcript, is our only guide through the nightmare that unfolded. The hollow, Blackwood wrote, had always been a place of deep quiet. The woods did not sing with birds as other forests did. The wind seemed to hold its breath as it passed through the canopy. But the people were hardy. They mistook the silence for peace. They were wrong. It began on the 6th of October. It was not a storm. It was a fog, an ash veil as Blackwood called it. It rolled in not from the sea, but seemingly up from the earth itself, a thick, sulfur-yellow miasma that clung to the ground like a shroud. It did not smell of the sea or of rain. It smelled, Blackwood penned, of dry cellars and forgotten attics. It did not dissipate with the morning sun. It stayed. For 3 days, the town lived within this perpetual, jaundiced twilight. And then, the lament began. It started with the children. Sarah, the blacksmith's daughter, was found by the well, her hand outstretched, her mouth open as if to call, but no sound emerged. She was not mute. She was paused. Her eyes were alive, darting in sheer, unutterable terror, but her body was frozen. A living effigy. Dr. Storni, the town physician, examined her. He found no malady, no fever, no mark. He only noted in his own log that her skin felt cold, like river clay. Then it took the animals. The livestock in the field stood motionless, their heads bowed, statues of hide and bone. The dogs ceased their barking. The only sound in Viridian Hollow was the panicked, shuffling feet of the adults, their voices growing, strained and sharp. Ephraim Blackwood tried to maintain order. He convened the town council in the meeting house, the fog coiling around their boots. He read from the scriptures, his voice booming with forced conviction. But as he spoke, he watched Deacon Hemlock, a man of booming sermons, raise a hand to object, and freeze. The hand remained raised, the objection unvoiced, the man's eyes wide with the same terrible, silent realization as the child. The panic that followed was not loud. It was a dreadful, clumsy scramble. People fled to their homes, barring their doors, but the ash veil seeped through the keyholes, under the sills. It was not a poison. It was a solvent. It dissolved the will to move, the ability to speak. Blackwood's internal conflict, captured in his frantic, sloping script, is the heart of our tragedy. He was a man of logic, a man who believed the world was governed by God's laws. But this was a subversion of reality itself. He barricaded himself in his study, his wife, Elara, beside him. She was a quiet woman, but her presence had always been his anchor. On the 2nd day of his seclusion, he wrote, "Elara has not spoken since morning. She sits by the hearth, watching the fog curl upon the floorboards. I asked her to pray with me. She turned her head. Her eyes were not her own. They were calm. Too calm. She is listening to it. What was it? This is where Blackwood's search for a rational answer descends into a Baroque painting of madness. He realized the affliction was not random. It targeted the loudest, first the crying child, the barking dog, the arguing deacon. It seemed to be ... hunting sound. The town was falling silent, one by one, the petrification of the voice, he called it. Those who were taken were not dead. They became the watchers. Neighbors he had known his entire life now stood in the village green, motionless, their heads tilted slightly as if straining to hear something just beyond human perception. When the wind blew, it was the only thing that moved, rustling their clothes, but not their bodies. Blackwood, a man of action, could not abide this. He took his musket, not to fight, but as a comfort. He ventured out into the yellow twilight. The Hala was a museum of terror. He walked past the tavern, where men were frozen mid-argument. Tankards held aloft. He saw the blacksmith. His hammer stopped inches from the anvil. It was a world paused at the precipice of a scream. He felt his own voice thickening in his throat, a terrible lethargy climbing his limbs. To speak, he realized, was to invite it. To make sound was to be found. He forced himself to shout the Lord's Prayer, a desperate act of defiance. The fog, he wrote, recoiled from him, then swarmed. He felt a pressure in his ears, an immense, crushing weight, as if the entire sky was pressing down, demanding his silence. He fled, his heart pounding, the sound of his own boots, a betrayal. His faith was cracking. God has turned his face from this place, he wrote, his hand shaking. Or perhaps, the God that answers is not the one we have prayed to. He became obsessed with the source. The fog emanated from the ancient wood at the edge of the township, the one place the founders had been warned not to clear, a place the local tribes called the Mouth of Quiet. Armed with his journal and a lantern, he entered the woods. The trees here were different. Their bark was pale, their leaves a sickly gray, and they were covered in a fungus, a strange, velvety moss that seemed to absorb the sound of his footsteps. The deeper he went, the quieter it became, until the only sound was the frantic scratching of his own quill pen. He found a clearing. In the center was not a cave, not a monster, but a small, dark pond. The water was unnaturally still, black as obsidian. The ash veil was thickest here, rising from the water's surface like steam. Blackwood approached. He saw no demon, no witch. He saw only his own reflection. But as he watched, his reflection changed. It looked back at him, not with his own terror, but with the serene, empty calm of his wife, Alara. The watcher, the reflection opened its mouth, and Blackwood felt the sound in his bones, though he heard nothing. It was a cold, ancient, and hungry silence. He realized the truth. The land itself was the entity. It had been here long before them. It had allowed them to build their town, feeding on the small sounds of their lives. But now, it was awake, and had wanted to collect them. The prosperity of Viridian Hollow, the rich soil, the strong timber. It was all bait. The lament was not a curse. It was a harvest. His destiny, he understood, was not to fight this, but to chronicle it, to be the last voice. He wrote, "The fog is in my lungs. The ink freezes on the nib. It is hard to form the letters. I see Alara in the water. She is waiting. The watchers are gathering behind me in the trees. I can feel their stillness. It is peaceful. The noise of the world is a burden. The silence is a relief. I will be the last. I will write the end." His final entry is a single, jagged line, as if the pen was dragged from his hand. "We will be quiet now." 3 months later, a militia from Boston, investigating the lack of communication, found Viridian Hollow. The fog was gone. The sun was shining. But the town was empty. No, not empty. It was full. Every man, woman, and child was accounted for. They were in their homes, in the streets, into church frozen. Silent. Their eyes wide, staring at something just beyond the veil of the world. The militia captain's report stated the townsfolk had perished from a mass hysteria and exposure, but he could not explain why the bodies had not decayed. He could not explain why the food on the tables was still fresh. He ordered the town burned to the ground, lest this contagion of the mind spread. The Viridian transcript, Blackwood's journal, was found clutched in the hand of a statue of a man at the edge of the burned forest, his face a mask of horrified serenity. Historians today dismiss the journal as the ravings of a religious zealot succumbing to madness. They argue the town was likely wiped out by an undocumented plague or an environmental toxin. But those who have studied the manuscript, who have felt the cold weight of Blackwood's words, know better. They know that Viridian Hollow is still there, beneath the new growth, and it is still listening. Thank you for walking the shadowed paths of the Unveiled Scroll. The past is never truly buried. It is merely waiting. If you found yourself captivated by the silence of the Hollow, perhaps you will explore the echoes of our other investigations, waiting for you now on the screen. Until next time, listen closely to the quiet.